These kind of meetings here remind me at the moment in my life that instead of as a young student in Belgium, I was not playing football on Wednesday afternoon or in the weekend, but supporting the Portuguese Revolution. Antonio knows the story. I will not repeat the story here. But I think that what you did at that time and what we tried to support at that time is still something worth to fight for. I'm not a traditional trade unionist. And if traditional trade unions would hear it, I would lose probably some part of support. But I am a hardline defender of human rights, of fundamental freedoms, and I can't support injustice in any way. And I'm convinced, and unfortunately it is still the case 2019, that all over the world, but we are not at world mill yet, we are still Euromill, but that all over the world, but especially in our case in Europe, military personnel, soldiers, and their families are given injustice. We are not, as had been said by some of the other speakers, we are not at the point that governments use military personnel, and that's what we are there for, to be used, but we are not there to be misused. And if we are used, there is an obligation from the state towards us and our families to support and to cover us in every moment that we have a problem due to executing our mission. And this is something which is worthwhile to continue to fight for and to be sure that our rights are recognized and accepted by everybody. Some of you said we pay the bill for the past. I think this is especially in the southern area of Europe. This is something that we see everywhere in the southern part. Another one said they don't like the military. I think this is very often wherever that we discuss with governments, with parliaments, and I don't believe that it has to do with like us. It has to do a little bit with sometimes being afraid of the military, being afraid of to give too much opening to the military, because the military is the instrument of governments, of parliaments, where the parliaments decide, and it's an instrument for security, an instrument for peace, and in some places, thank God, not really in Europe for the moment, can also be an instrument to get goals for a government or a parliament that we don't really want. And I think that there is a little bit being afraid of giving too much competences and openness towards the military. Now let me for the second time say something on trade unions, which could make it difficult for me. Don't believe that we are liked everywhere in the trade union world by everybody. And that is just the reason why we should join trade unions. Because trade unions also look very often towards the military as a special kind of people. Are they really there, the military, to defend workers' rights? Are they really workers? Well, this is just the point why we should be a part of the trade union world. My Danish good friend Fleming is not here. He had to go back home late yesterday evening. But yesterday he made it also very clear that when the Danish, which have a very strong trade unionism in the armed forces, when they started joining the trade union world in Denmark, they were not really liked. Everybody was looking at them as, do we want them to join the trade unions? Today, this same military trade unionist is the head negotiator for the full public sector in Denmark. Nobody in Denmark is asking questions again on Flemming Winter, our Danish colleague, if he is a good trade unionist and defender of workers' rights. I think sometimes, Fleming is anyway not here, that we have more questions on Fleming than the Danish trade unions. But that's another story. We need to join the trade union world. And this will not stop military associationism and strong military associations. It's not because we want to work hand in hand and under the umbrella of trade unions that we will lose our specific competence as military defenders of our military rights. Because we will always remain, also in the trade union world, a very specific kind of people with a very specific task, which we have chosen, thank God, freely to serve our country and to serve international community. So we will remain special workers, citizens in uniform, as has been said. And the fact that we are citizens in uniform is just a point that cannot lead to the fact that we lose certain fundamental freedoms which are universal and are there for every, or should be there, for every citizen on this globe. I don't want to reopen the discussion on political rights, I don't want to open discussion on whatever right, but we should not lose them. And having political rights as an individual soldier should not stop the armed forces to be politically neutral. That's very clear. We don't need political armed forces. We had that in the 30s and we have that in still some countries all over the world. That's not what we want. We want to defend values, but we also want to defend as armed forces human rights and fundamental freedoms. Because why do we send people out in mission abroad? To defend human rights and fundamental freedoms that sometimes our own people don't have every day. So once again, it's worth to fight for. Now a last word. Let's be careful with what we ask. Because sometimes you get what you ask. And you have to be very careful with this. I asked yesterday my dear Antonio, are you sure between the 3 Portuguese associations that you know now what you are asking and how you want to deal with this in the future? And I explain why. Because I see now, and I predicted them, I see 2 main cases. With the Irish case, we are going in a good direction, and I really hope, and we will drink a big Guinness that day, that we have the trade union rights in Ireland. But I see 2 other cases, France and Italy. 2 cases, one before court, one in Strasbourg, one before the Constitutional Court in Rome. And I was at the Constitutional Court in Rome the 10th of April when the discussion was going on. And when we went out, I told my Italian colleagues, now is the moment to be careful. Because I think you will win the case, but I don't think you will get what you were fighting for the last 20 years. And this is what is happening today. Just like in France, the case has been won to get more representation rights. But nobody said that these representation rights are in a military association or in a trade union. Now there is not a big difference between both of them. But the difference is what is behind the names. And being a trade union means, as already said several times, having legal representation. And the most important point is to be able to make collective agreements, binding ones, signed by representatives of personnel and signed by representatives of governments. And where governments cannot say afterwards, we will not execute them. They are binding, they are legal, they are signed by people representing other ones and governments. And this is not the case in France. France won, but France has today military associations and have no right for collective bargaining, have no right to really defend French military personnel. But it's a good step. Before they had nothing, the first step is there. Italy, sorry to say, and I will repeat that at the end of next week in Rome with the same words, sorry, but what we have in Italy for the moment on the table is crap. It's nothing. They have in Italy for the moment, after the judgment of the Constitutional Court, first it took almost a year before somebody moved one bit, a lot of words coming from political parties, but no real movements. And now finally, because the parliament didn't act, in September the minister signed a document saying, as of now, military personnel in Italy can create and join professional associations, and now it's coming, with a trade union character. Can somebody here explain me what is a professional association with a trade union character? This is someone with blue eyes but with a green color. What is this? And meanwhile, I think we have 11 associations signed up for this. I will go quickly, Antonio, I tried. 11 associations. This is not working. We have now in Rome discussed for the moment in Parliament 2 propositions for the change of legislation. One from the 5-star movement, the ones who are going to change the world. And the 5-star movement made a proposition of law. And Forza Italia, from opposition side, made now a draft law. In both cases, we are coming to the point that there is no question on real trade unionism. In the one from the government side, from the 5-star, it's even forbidden to have a contact with trade unions. It can only be professional associations, but with a trade union character. But you cannot go to the trade union. In both cases, there is no social dialogue. In both cases, there is no wish to make collective agreements. This is not what we were fighting for with Italy for 20 years. This is giving you another name, saying that, and I repeat what I said, I don't know how many times to a Slovenian colleague, and he's so mad about it that he doesn't talk with me anymore. Thank you for that. I always told him, you can believe in your dreams that you are a racehorse, an Arabic racehorse, and you look in the mirror, and what do you see? A donkey. Very annoying. You dream, you run, and you really believe that you're the best one, and when you look to reality, nowhere. But you have a nice name. And there, my friends, be careful. Be careful. If we can have it tomorrow in Portugal, yes. And I will not drink a grappa from Portugal again, because it was really not nice. It was too strong. But if we can have it tomorrow, let's do it tomorrow. But let's be careful, let's take time, let's go step by step, and make sure that if we have now a change of legislation, that it's the one that we really want and like. And I'm not calling for the right to strike. I'm not calling to change completely the world, not in Portugal and not at other places. I'm calling on reality. I'm calling on the right to defend our rights and all those who will come after us and our families. That's the only thing that we need, and it must be binding, it must be in a correct way, and it must be in a way, and that's my final word, with respect for each other. Respect from government, respect from military leadership, respect from the trade union world, towards us and from us. And only then we can have a result. And if this could be at the end what we are getting, then I think that we did not work the last 20 years in vain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmanuel.